All right. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters, thank you for listening to today's show. We just wanted to get on the radio here and talk to you a little bit about the Leadership and Communication Expo that just occurred on June 29th, 2013 at the Rock Church. It was an amazing event. We had 24 different speakers in different rooms at different times, speaking on everything from how to manage your fear of public speaking to how to use more humor in your speeches. The feedback on the presentations was off the charts, everywhere from 4 to 6 points on a scale of 1 to 5, and many people were happy with the events that occurred. We even had a National Comedy Theater Improv Club come into the event and perform, and they were amazing. And one of the things I in particularly learned was how to start being more humorous in my speeches. How can I interject humor into the speeches right off the cuff, and using some things that are going on in the audience or in the event that I can relate to and start to interject humor into those into my presentations. One of the things that we got from our feedback was that more people wanted to hear more from the speakers. The speakers were so good, but we only had 45-minute sessions, and people wanted more. And so I reached out to a few people. A few people reached back, and one of them was Youre Crenshaw. Youre spoke on two things, and he is our guest today. Welcome to our show, Youre.
Thanks for having me, Bob. I really appreciate being here, but I want to also say Lace was phenomenal. I remember Lace in the winter of 2013 was good, but summer Lace was even hotter. So I just want to make sure I let you know that.
Well, thank you very much. It was hot. It was definitely hot. It was hot outside, and it was hotter inside. And we had some amazing presentations. One of them was your presentation on how to get booked as a public speaker. What were some of the things you covered in that presentation, Youre?
Well, basically what I did was I made sure that the audience knew that there's only four things you need to be able to answer in order to get booked as a public speaker. And that is, what are you selling? Who could use it the most? How do you reach them? And most importantly, how do you add value? And so that's what I covered in the workshop.
Wow, okay, great. And it sounds like you have a expertise in getting booked as a public speaker. Can you tell us how you developed that expertise? Because that sounds like something that not a lot of people have and a lot of people would like to get. How did you develop that skill?
Well, Bob, I don't know if I'm happy with you really sending me to have to reflect back on pain-filled moments, but because of you allowed me to do at Lace, I'm going to share with you. Getting booked as a speaker was a struggle for me for many years, and so much so that I almost let my dream fade away because I could find things on how to get better, how to create content. I could find trainings, and I actually pay for trainings and coaching on how to deliver better presentations, how to structure a speech, and things like that. But I was very hard-pressed to find a way to get booked as a speaker. And so I just really took the time and effort and extra trainings and getting involved with people who are in the trenches to give me some tools, techniques, and some tips because I was looking for a process that might work sometimes. And what happened was over the time and be putting all these things together from learning how to attract people when I was in the mortgage profession, how to attract clients when I was in the psychology profession. I took everything that I knew. I took marketing techniques, sales skills, influence techniques, and I put it all together to learn how to get booked. And because I've been able to get booked, it has allowed me to be able to share my message and create impact and influence people and profit in 6 different countries. So that's basically why I realized I needed to share it with other people because as I started to coach other speakers, they also had the same challenge. What about the part about getting booked? And so I just decided that it was up for me to share because there's so many people out there with messages that need to get heard, but they can't get heard if they don't get booked.
Yeah, that's great. It's a very valuable teaching that you have here. And I want to mention up front so people get a chance to hear it in case they tune out later that July 9th, you're going to be basically having a class that is going to be a continuation of what you did at LACE. Can you tell us about what you're going to be doing at 6:30 on July 9th at the Office of Education in Linda Vista?
Yeah, I will. Basically, it's not even necessarily a continuation because you mentioned it before, so I feel like I'm comfortable with saying it. My 45-minute presentation got started off a little late, so it was actually really only a 33-minute presentation. So I feel like I didn't give my audience what they came for. I wasn't able to live up to my promise. So once you reach out to me about opportunities to deliver more to the audience, I decided that I would be the first one to step in and give an hour and a half. So it's double what I was allotted for, but it'll be a full hour and a half. So I'll be able to cover the entire topic the way I wanted to cover it in LACE, but even with more detail than what I would have done at LACE. And on top of it, I give a guarantee that anyone who listens to the program, gets engaged, takes good notes, and implements what they pick up in this particular program will be able to be booked within a week of that particular program, which is next week on July the 9th at San Diego County Office of Education, 6:30.
Well, that's great. That is an amazing skill to have, and that's quite a claim to be booked in a week. That's awesome. So 6:30, Office of Education, July 9th, and you're going to be speaking on how to get booked as a public speaker. Why don't we jump into some of the details of the class so people can kind of get a feel for what they'll be learning? I understand, what I'd like to hear from you is what are the benefits of public speaking, first of all? Let's start with that.
Bob, there's at least 3 very powerful benefits from public speaking that, unfortunately, so many people overlook. I mean, it's phenomenal. But consider this, Bob. When you're speaking in public to a group of 10 to 100 to 1,000 or whatever, you're able to leverage one to many instead of having just one-on-one conversations. And that's very good. And also, you'll be able to identify high-target organizations, groups, associations, if you speak for a free or for a low fee. And what happens when you do that, it's the fastest way to build your reputation as an expert. As most of us know, the person that's in front of the room automatically, just from being in the front of the room, starts out as a position higher or in a position of as an expert as long as they are able to follow through and deliver a competent presentation. So public speaking is the fastest way that you can build your reputation as an expert. But this is the point I want to make that's even more important than that. When you're speaking in front of the public, it is the most effective way to build an emotional bond with your audience. This bond is not accessible through other types of marketing, not even social media. And to me, that's the number one thing from public speaking. I get such an emotional connection when I present or when I do a program that it's unmatched. And the reason why I do this, Bob, because I'm all about emotions and people. When I'm able to see people go from not knowing to knowing, it does something to me that I get from nothing else. I mean, it's a feeling that's priceless, and you can only get that, in my opinion, when you deliver a presentation that's one to many. Now, there's also some other benefits that I'll just touch on real quickly, 1 or 2. As far as if you're using it for business, it's also a much faster way to actually grow your business as well, because you get to get warm leads for your business by speaking, because the people will identify themselves in your presentation. So if you're doing it for lead generation, you get warm calls instead of cold calls. It also makes it easier for you to set appointments with people once you've given presentations, and it will shorten your sales cycle. So those basically are the main reasons. I gave you 6, Bob, that I think are very important.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned the emotional bond, because I hadn't considered it that way before, but as you're talking about it, it's occurring to me that, you know, you're right. You get such a emotional bond speaking to a group of people than you do one-on-one. And I've been in rooms where I've created that bond and had people come up to me and say things to me that they never would have said if I would have had the same discussion with them one-on-one. And so that's interesting that you say that. Why do you think that occurs?
Well, one reason why I think it occurs is, now there's a caveat to that before I can tell you the reason why I think it occurs.
Mm-hmm.
One caveat to that is it only happens for people who have the ability to create captivating content and deliver it effectively. Well, it's not something that happens to everyone. It's something that can happen to everyone, but I'm sure you probably have been in audiences where there have been boring speakers, so it's not something that's automatic.
Right.
But there's a high likelihood for it happening. But the reason why that happens is, imagine this: you're wondering if this person is all for themselves, or is this person really want to help people? Well, if you see a person giving out valuable information to a group of people, answering their questions and things like that, it's very easy for you to say this person is a giving person. This person is a person who wants to help others. And people get emotionally connected to people who they know or who they feel want to help others. And so that's one of the keys, and that's one of the things I'll talk about in the program as well, is you have to have the heart of a speaker in order to really be effective as a speaker, because you speak for the audience. You don't speak for yourselves.
Right.
And that's one of the keys.
Right.
Yeah, and that's one of those keys to success as a speaker that helps you to get booked. People can notice that when we have conversations, and when I talk about in the program how to have a conversation with someone who can hire you or with someone who can book you, I talk about how you have that conversation. When you have that conversation, the person can feel, notice I'm saying feel, not necessarily just hear, but they can feel that you want to really help their group.
Right. All right. Well, I know there are other programs out there that can help you get booked, but what's different about your program? What's the difference between other programs that may be out there and what you're going to be talking about at your program on July 9th?
What makes my program different is not only do I give you what to do and how to do it, I give you another piece that's the critical piece that most presenters, trainers leave out. I tell you why. I tell you why the things that I'm asking you to do or recommending that you do and showing you how to do, why you should do them. And the key is, the why is where the creation of the motivation to implement comes in. Because most people, they won't implement. They go to seminars, trainings, programs, they don't implement. And it's because they're not aware of the why. And it's been said, when the why is strong enough, well, people will go into action. So I also show you what to do, how to do it, but most importantly, why you should do it. And I think that's the main difference. And then another difference is, instead of being on theory-based, I give step-by-step, practical, tactical, implementable tools that you can use immediately.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Now, I understand also, you need to know who to go to when you're trying to get booked, right? You can't just start wander around a company. You need to know who to ask for. If you go over that at all, how to approach an organization and who to ask for, who to talk to?
I do, because one of the problems that many speakers have is they end up talking to the secretary, or they're, and that's just a euphemism, but they end up talking to a person who can't book them. They have a long, detailed conversation with someone who cannot book them. So in a program, I would share with you who you need to talk to, and then also how you may sometimes have to get through the gatekeeper in order to get to that person who can hire you. I highly recommend that you only speak to people who can actually book you when you go through this process, and I show you exactly how to find those people. But not only that, you know who to talk to. Again, once you find out who to talk to, and I'm going to give a valuable resources that most people have never heard of, that gives you thousands and thousands of contact information for people that you can book you. But once I show you who, I'll also give you step-by-step process of how to handle that conversation so that the result is a no-brainer yes.
Got it. So once you figure out who to talk to, then the question becomes, what do you say to that person when you start talking to them? Do you go over that part of it as well?
Oh, for sure, because that's the hang-up that a lot of people have. I worked with a client, started working with him about 18 months ago, and we had this conversation, and this is before I actually packaged everything up into the program that I have right now, and I gave him a lot of tools and techniques and places to go and who to talk to, and then he went out and tried to implement it. The problem was he came back to me and he said, like, Genero, I was able to get some conversation started, but once they got started, I didn't know what to say. But now he knows what to say, and he gets booked regularly to speak on his topic, which is delinquency. So he's helping kids, school administrations, and parents keep the kids in school instead of being delinquents. But now he's able to spread his message because he not only knows who to contact, he knows what to say that allows him to get in and deliver his message.
Awesome. So we've gone in and we've figured out who to talk to. We've opened the conversation because now we know what to say. What would be the next step in that process that you take us down as far as getting booked as a public speaker?
Well, it's a subset of that process of what to say. In that whole process of what to say, the idea is when you are getting across what you want to say, the idea is you're demonstrating to the person who can bring you in that you can bring value to their organization. But we're doing it in a way that makes it simple, easily, and effortless for them to make a decision. And that's the key, because in most of these situations, the person who can book you is actually has that as a subset of his other work that she may be doing. So the easier it is and the more structured your process is for conveying your information, the easier it is for them to make a decision immediately. And usually, if you make the process easy, the decision is yes. And then but the idea is you're going to show the value. Most speakers don't have a clue of how to articulate their value.
Right.
Since they can't articulate their value, they get stuck in the commodity of bunched up with all other people who may have want to speak. I'll give you a classic example. I spoke about a month ago now, maybe 2 months ago. I speak so often I don't have all track. But I spoke at the American Society for Quality. And the value for them was a lot of the speakers who come in are so technical, PowerPoint-driven, statistics and this and that. So when I was talking to the person that could bring me in, she mentioned, would you be able to do an interactive, engaging program? Now, that was a sweet spot for me, because that's how I deliver my presentations anyway in my programs. But this was the result. When I went in with no PowerPoint and gave the presentations the way I give it, I got an email back the following workday, and she was ecstatic and talked about how my presentation, my program was much better than all the other speakers that they have coming in. But the value was not necessarily my content, because I'm not a quality specialist. I talked about leadership, but my real value was I was able to give them a presentation that was captivating, engaging, and that was the value to the person bringing me in. Not necessarily giving just a whole bunch of information and content, because they can get that anywhere.
Right.
But the overall result is now I'm going to be booked to speak at a regional conference in San Francisco just because of that presentation that I did just in May.
Wow, that's great. So a question I have for you is about choosing the audience you speak to? Because it seems to me like some speakers, they have such trouble getting booked that they just kind of shotgun it and, try and go for whoever's going to, take them on as a speaker. And do you have a different type of process that you go through, like where you choose the companies or choose your audiences and then target those instead, or is there any kind of process that you'll be covering that where you choose your process of choosing speakers in your audience?
There is a process, and we're going to go through that. One of the processes that we talked about, I mentioned that there was 4 steps, and the second step was who could use whatever you're selling. So the first step was determine what you're selling, and then the second step was understanding who could use what you're selling the most. And we're going to talk about that because every group or every sub-segment of people have information that's most suited for them. And when you figure out who's most suited for your message, not only do you feel better about giving your message and you get more excited about giving your message and you make a deeper emotional connection, but your message is so much easier to put together, and it resonates with you and it resonates with the audience. So that's where you get the deepest connection. But so many speakers don't know how to find audiences, so they feel like they have to speak to whoever they can speak to and just hope for the best. Like you said, they're throwing things at the wall and hope something sticks. But once you identify what you're selling and then target down to the people who can use it the most, there's some techniques that you can use. You can use niching, which we'll talk about, to really get to the people who can use it the most. And then there's another concept we talk about as well, is you can have a topic that for some people it's a vitamin, but for other people it's a painkiller. And if you talk to people who sees whatever you're selling as a painkiller, you will have no trouble getting booked. And we'll talk about how you identify the painkillers. That's one of the things that I do as a consultant work as well, is people often ask me how am I able to get much higher fees than a typical speaker. And one is I don't go in as a speaker. I go in as somebody who can bring value, a solution, but the solution I'm bringing is a solution to a pain. I'm not coming in just as a vitamin where you can take it or you don't take it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because people sometimes take their vitamins, but they always take their painkillers, I understand.
Yeah. For example, in a tough economy, people may stop buying vitamins, but people will stop eating before they stop buying their painkillers. Painkillers are at the top of the food chain.
Yeah, got it. So at LACE, you also spoke about captivating content. Will you be covering that or touching on captivating content, your second presentation at LACE during your July 9th presentation?
I won't talk about captivating content specifically because, again, we only have 90 minutes, and I can talk about how to get booked for a whole day. So I won't talk much about that, but the key is this, though, Bob, and I'm just going to share this with you because it makes a lot of sense. One of the best ways to get booked is to give a good presentation because the people who are going to refer you or recommend you the most are people who heard you speak. And that's how I get much of my presentations in my programs. For example, 87% of the people who bring me in, 87.4 to be exact, bring me back again. But the other main part of my bookings comes from people who heard me speak, and they recommend me to another organization or to another group that I can speak to. But that only happens if you give a good speech. So I'll touch on that a little bit, and I also give in the program, the listeners, the audience will pick up a basic structure of how you need to put together a presentation so that you can walk out of one presentation into another, but it'll be very, very basic. It won't be in great detail. But I do have a course for that. But I do have a program that's coming up that I'll be unleashing in August that will cover that, but that's not something that we're going to be doing now.
Right. Okay, great. Great. Now, can you give the listeners something they can use right after the show ends? I understand that you have some downloads or something available to them. Can you explain what's available to our listeners when the show's over?
Yes. Well, what's going to be available to them once the show's over is a very valuable resource on how to actually make cold calls. Cold calls are a very important tool that's needed to get booked, especially when you haven't been booked before. So the listeners will be able to go to your website, to your Lay Speakers Bureau website, and I'm sure you'll give them the link or whatever later, but they'll be able to go to the Lay Speakers Bureau website and get that free gift, and that's for everyone who is on the call. They'll be able to get that free gift.
That's great. Okay, so the website that you'll go to, listeners, to get your free gift from Genero and get started right away would be d5lace.com, d5lace.com, and in the left-hand margin, you'll see upcoming classes. If you click on Genero's picture for July 9th, it'll send you right to the place to get your free gift, and you'll be able to download those helpful hints about cold calls. Is there anything else that you'd like to explain or cover, Genero, before we end the show?
What I probably would want to do is just say everyone can be effective at getting booked. It's just you have to know what you're selling, who can use it the most, find out how you're going to reach them, and determine how you're going to add value. You'll pick up all that in the program. But most importantly, I want to leave people with this. When I first got pretty proficient as a speaker, my coach, matter of fact, many Toastmasters may know him, my coach Craig Valentine introduced me to a meeting planner that he had worked with when he first got started early in his career. And when I talked to Carrie, the first question she asked me about getting booked was, how often have I been getting booked in the past? And I thought that was a very good question. So the idea is this: if you can't get yourself booked, it's going to be very hard for you to have other people to get you booked. So that's why this becomes a very valuable tool to pick up for yourself. So I think that's the takeaway I think people would really want to get.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Genero, for your time today. And thank you so much for offering to Toastmasters here in District 5 the ability to come back. And if you weren't at LACE, you can come and listen to Genero's program and on how to get booked as a public speaker. If you were at LACE but you didn't take Genero's class, you have a second opportunity to come back. And if you did take Genero's class and you want to see it again or you have questions for Genero, it's 90 minutes long instead of 45, so I'm sure Genero will have time for questions and answers. And I encourage you to come out. The program, again, is on July 9th at the San Diego County Office of Education on Linda Vista Road, July 9th at 6:30 p.m. sharp. Genero, you have it in which room at the Office of Education?
It's in room 306.
Room 306. All righty. Well, thank you so much, Genero, for being on our show today. And we look forward to seeing you on July 9th. And I'm sure we'll be able to convince you maybe to do a presentation on captivating content once this is over, and I encourage our listeners to look for that interview before that program occurs as well.
Could you make sure you let them know again, Bob, where they can get their free gift? I want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to get that free gift.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can get your free download from Genero, your free gift on d5lace.com. Left-hand margin, click on Genero's picture, and you'll be able to go right to the place to get your free gift from Genero Crenshaw, and you'll be ready to go for July 9th. All right, sir. Well, thank you again, and until next time, we will see you soon, fellow Toastmasters.